The Nvidia MX150 that's usually found in budget ultrabooks and laptops is unfortunately not getting replaced by the MX250 nearly as fast as I would have liked, so today we're going to do an updated 2019 benchmarking video because there's a lot of new games that have come out and I have 15 of them for today. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome to Zach's Tech Turf. Today we're going to be benchmarking the Nvidia MX150 and seeing how it's doing here in 2019 with some PC gaming action. And if you're new here and you want to see more benchmarking or PC building videos, then hit that subscribe button down below and also that notification bell. That way you never miss an episode. But before we get into it, let me quickly pay some bills. Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the #1 spot, at least in my opinion, to create a website if you're looking to boost your online presence. Squarespace is perfect for people like me, and chances are probably like you, because I have absolutely zero real website building experience, and Squarespace makes it super easy to do with their award-winning templates. If you're looking to create a website maybe for your PC flipping business, or maybe consolidate all of your social media links for you streamers to one spot, then I highly recommend using them as your all-in-one website building platform. I actually transferred my third-party domain to Squarespace, yet another awesome feature by the way that was super easy to do, because I wanted to take advantage of their templates that transform really well to mobile, their excellent customer service, and honestly, I just wanted to get a clean looking website up and running quickly. I'll show you guys my final website in an upcoming video, but if you want to take my word before that, then head on down to that first link in the description, squarespace.com/CTT, to score yourself a 14-day free trial and 10% off your next subscription. Alright, so you may or may not have known, but the MX150 actually comes in multiple variants, and today I have the 2GB but more powerful 25W chip. Before moving on, it's very important to indeed know about this difference in the MX150. The 10W version that's mostly found in ultrabooks is severely underclocked compared to this one, but Nvidia nor the laptop manufacturers ever actually explain this. You can check which version of the MX150 you have by using GPU Z, and as you can see here, I have the 1D10 version, which is clocked at 1469 MHz, which is the indeed faster 25W chip. Moving on to our testing rig, this is my kind of famous Huawei Matebook D laptop. Don't worry, I'm not going to get into any of the Huawei drama in this video, sorry, but yeah, the reason why I call it kind of famous is I actually released a dedicated review of the Matebook D last year, and up until today, you guys are still asking me questions about it. This specific Matebook D is also rocking an Intel i5-8250U CPU, which boosts up to 3.4 GHz. There's 8GB of DDR4 RAM. My operating system is installed on my own ADATA SSD that I personally installed, but the games are installed on the slower 1TB 5400 RPM hard drive that the laptop originally shipped with. Another thing to note is that this hard drive is now over a year old, and like I keep saying, aging hard drives will definitely have an effect on those 1% and 0.1% lows, so that's definitely something to be aware of. Another thing to note is that the settings for each game that you're about to see are the settings that I would personally recommend, and I also did make sure to ensure that the games were utilizing the MX150 graphics chip and not the integrated Intel GPU, and the laptop remained plugged in with high performance settings. The first game up was none other than Fortnite, and here in 900p in low settings with the resolution scale at 100%, I averaged right on the money at 60 FPS. I know I sound like a broken record, but for today's video, I decided that it would indeed be a good idea to lock the FPS at 60. Fortnite is notorious for draining your CPU with an unlocked frame rate, so that's why the lows are usually very low, but with these settings, the game actually performed quite nicely. Next up was PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and in 900p with very low settings, I averaged 46 frames per second. This one was certainly a bit choppy, especially in certain areas of the map, but the average FPS was actually pretty impressive. Apex Legends followed up next to stick with the Battle Royale theme, and in 900p in low settings, I got an average FPS of 45. For this one, I did feel like 45 FPS was smooth enough that I didn't have to drop it to 720p, but your mileage may vary depending on your FPS goals. Counter-Strike Global Offensive followed after that, and in 1080p in high settings, I actually only got 54 frames per second, which seemed kinda low. I honestly think that this was one of the cases of the hard drive slowing us down a bit, but as you can see in the top left-hand corner, we weren't showing any signs of a bottleneck for this one. After that, I tested Rainbow Six Siege with the built-in benchmarking tool, and in 1080p in low settings, I got just above our target 60 FPS mark. Rocket League was up next, and in 1080p in quality settings during an online match, I got again just above our target 60 FPS mark. This one was super smooth during an online match, no problem. Getting into the tougher to run games, I fired up Far Cry New Dawn with the built-in benchmarking tool, and in 720p in low settings, I got 40 frames per second. After that, I tested an even harder to run game, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and in 720p with low settings, I only got 31 frames per second. With this one, you can definitely see that the GPU was being bottlenecked by the CPU, as our i5-8250U was definitely definitely holding the MX150 back a bit. Now this is something that I want to quickly talk about. Although our budget i5 isn't going to allow us to fully benchmark the MX150, at the end of the day the MX150 is indeed a lower end GPU, so you're not really going to find it paired with a higher end CPU in that many cases. This is pretty much a realistic benchmark and definitely something to be aware of if you're in the market for a laptop with an MX150. Moving on to the other benchmark, Shadow the Tomb Raider was up next, and with the built-in benchmarking tool in 720p in the lowest settings, I got an average of 37. These results aren't great, but here you can see that both the CPU and GPU were chugging pretty equally without a bottleneck. After that, I tested Devil May Cry 5, and this one definitely did not run well at all. In 720p in low settings, I got an average FPS of 31, and there was some serious stutters going on, as you can see here. Monster Hunter World followed after that, and in 1080p in low settings, I only averaged 25 FPS. You could definitely drop this down to 720p if you wanted to, but this was definitely another case of the CPU being a huge bottleneck, so this one definitely is going to be a tough one to run with this system. After that, I tested Resident Evil 2, and in 1080p in low/medium settings, I got an average FPS of 33. I personally thought that this was smooth enough to not drop it down to 720p, but once again, your mileage may vary. Following that, I fired up Battlefield 5, another CPU intensive title, and in 720p in low settings, I averaged 32 FPS. 32 FPS definitely sounds slow, but honestly, if this is your only gaming PC, you certainly have a playable game here. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 followed that, and in 720p and low settings, I averaged 49 frames per second. In 720p and low settings, this game certainly doesn't look great, but the performance was pretty good, so no complaints for me. And finally, the last game in this 15 game benchmarking run was The Division 2, and with the built-in benchmarking tool at 900p and low settings, I averaged 43 frames per second. Whew! So there you have it. That's what the MX150 is looking like here in mid-2019, and as you can see, it'll at least allow you to play almost every title, but unfortunately you're not going to get a smooth playing experience. As we all know, the MX150 is essentially a GT 1030 in a mobile GPU form, so you definitely can't expect it to dominate the newer titles. In my opinion, if you're in the market for a super cheap laptop that can handle a little bit of light gaming, then it's not a bad pickup, but if you're in the market for a laptop specifically for gaming, I wouldn't get anything less than one with the GTX 1050 or 1050 Ti. Well, that wraps up my MX150 benchmarks in 2019 video. As always, drop a comment down below about what you thought about these benchmarks, and also huge thank you and shout out to all of you that went to my first ever live stream over the weekend. We had a lot of fun. As always, feel free to head on over to one of these two videos if you haven't seen them yet, and definitely hit that subscribe button because coming up next, I'm gonna start live streaming more, and you don't want to miss those videos.